I call meeting number 11 of the Standing Citizenship and Immigration to order. Before we proceed, just health and safety reminder to everyone. A reminder to all attendees in the room to physically distance yourselves from others by at least 2 meters and to wear a mask unless you are seated and more than 2 meters from anyone else. This is the hybrid meeting. Some members are appearing in person in the parliamentary precinct and the others are appearing remotely. Please speak at a pace slow enough for interpretation to keep up. And the clerk will be tracking raising hands and keeping a list for the chair. All questions shall be decided by a recorded vote, except for those decided unanimously or on division based on the order adopted by the House of Commons on September 23rd. The meeting is being webcast and is available on PAL View. Today, we have our first panel of witnesses to hear on the impact of COVID-19 on the immigration system. And in the second panel, we will have the IRCC officials. The first panel witnesses are Usman Mahmood, appearing as an individual, barrister and solicitor. Second, we have St. Mary's University Student Association, being represented by the president, Brian D. Castellan. And the third witness for today is Immigration Services Association of Nova Scotia, being represented by Chief Executive Officer Jennifer Watts. On behalf of all the members, I want to thank and welcome the witnesses for today's important meeting as we end hearing from the witnesses on our study of the impact of COVID-19 on the immigration system. All the witnesses will have 5 minutes for their opening remarks, and then we will go into the round of questioning. So we will start with Mr. Usman Mahmood. Mr. Mahmood, you can please start. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Usman Mahmood. I'm a practicing lawyer from CIMM Law in Calgary, Alberta. I would like to begin by thanking you for having me this afternoon, as it is an honor to be speaking to you all today. My focus of practice is mainly on immigration litigation, including but not limited to the refugee claims from the victims of religious persecution and political persecution, most importantly the Ahmadis, Shias, and Christians in Pakistan, for which the Canadian government must hold such countries accountable. Can I be heard? Can you all hear me?
We could hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. I'm speaking regarding the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. First point was about the application backlogs. The application backlogs have increased, in my opinion, significantly with COVID closures. The case processing centres in Canada and the visa office abroad remained closed for more than 3 months. With spousal sponsorship applications, applicants are expected to provide original police clearance certificates, for example, and other original documents. However, this expectation is unrealistic at this time due to the fact that the closures and access are affected globally. Processing times for temporary resident visas are at present showing a wait of about 230 days. This is exceptionally long. I personally am affected by this in that I have recently invited my mother, a resident of the UK, with a Pakistani passport in her 60s, to visit me, as I'm not able to leave my work and visit with my old parents, as this isolation is impacting their mental well-being. Obviously, the solution for such problems would be maybe creating a triage system for visitors' visas, where the applications could be accepted on per stage basis, case per case. If it's not something that they can process, then that should be rejected straight off the bat. Reopen the visa application centers globally, with health and safety in mind. Implement by appointment only visitors. Any interviews regarding spousal applications can be held by virtual means, MS Teams, Zoom, and all these different facilities that can be taken into account. Implement online submission of document packages for spousal sponsorship via e-post, for example. We have to move away from paper-based applications. It's taking too long, and I'm sure it's costing the government a lot of money as well. The lottery system by which you the second part was about the lottery system and the introduction of the lottery system in parents and grandparents visa. The lottery system by which you must wait months, literally at the moment 6 months, to see if you have been picked to sponsor your parents, and this too without having submitted any financial information, only acknowledging that you are a citizen or a resident of Canada and what country your parents are residing in. There is no clarification as to what that criteria is for selection, so we are unclear about this. The minimum necessary income was reduced to match the low income cutoff. However, it would, if the situation remains the same around the world, then this should continue for the next year and possibly the year after, in light of the number of job losses due to the pandemic. A possible reply to this program is to maybe go back to the initial application process, having everyone to submit their packages as they once did in 2014 and 2015. And IRCC is suggested to implement more efficient and effective ways to process them. Solution may be to eliminate the lottery system and revert back to the old system. And second could be give unsuccessful candidates not selected in the year's cutoff a queue for the next year's submission. If someone's unsuccessful, then just refuse them straight off the bat, as opposed to making them wait for years and years. Keep the low income cutoff income amounts in place for at least 2 more years, as I've suggested earlier, to recover from the current economic situation. The last point is about the temporary resident visas processing delays. The temporary resident visa, which is TRV, the application centers must reopen fully, and biometric collection must resume for temporary resident visa applications, including students and foreign workers. The most common issue currently faced by students is the fact that their acceptance letters can only be issued a certain amount of time before their entry to Canada. Thus,
Mr. Mahmood, sorry for interrupting.
Yes.
Time is up. We will now move to our second witness. We will now hear from Mr. Brian D. Castellan, the president of St. Mary's University Student Association. Mr. Castellan, floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, esteemed committee members, and fellow witnesses. I would like to begin my statement today by acknowledging that I speak to you from Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. My name is Brenda Chastelain, and I'm the president of the St. Mary's University Students Association and a fourth-year student pursuing a Bachelor of Arts degree with a double major in both political science and economics. This year, I'm also the chair of the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, a nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization that represents over 275,000 students at colleges, polytechnics, and universities from coast to coast to coast. Through a formal partnership with the Union Étudiante de Québec, CASA is a truly national student voice. I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to speak today on this particularly important issue, the impact of COVID-19 on international students studying in Canada. As a representative of 1,700 international students at St. Mary's University and over 700,000 international students studying across Canada, it is clear to me that they have been overlooked during this unprecedented crisis. International students are a critical part of the post-secondary community in Canada, as well as significant contributors to their regional economies. The international student community in Canada has grown considerably over the past 20 years, outstriping domestic enrollment and bringing much needed diversity to post-secondary campuses across the country. As of 2018, there were 721,000 international students studying in Canada, supporting nearly 170,000 jobs and contributing $21.6 billion to the national GDP. This is, in part, due to the fantastic quality of education offered by Canadian post-secondary institutions like my school, St. Mary's, but also due to Canada's reputation as a safe and tolerant country with accessible pathways to permanent residency. According to a 2018 survey conducted by the Canadian Bureau for International Education, 60% of international students said they plan to remain and work in Canada once they graduate. Seeing this, international students have been heavily recruited, and governments across the country are increasingly keen on prioritizing international student retention as a key pillar of future economic growth. That being said, While governments across the country recognize the importance of international students, they have been reluctant to provide support to those stranded in Canada, as well as to those struggling to cope abroad. Despite their higher tuition fees and study permit work restrictions, international students were shut out of pandemic aid programs for students, such as the Canada Emergency Student Benefit and the expanded Canada Summer Jobs Program. Furthermore, international students with valid or approved study permits abroad were left without proper support and communication from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And many were forced to continue attending virtual classes in the middle of the night to ensure they remained eligible for a postgraduate work permit in Canada. International students needed and still need support, but governments across the country have let them down while at the same time hoping that they stay and work after graduation. These problems were exacerbated in Atlantic Canada due to the demographic realities underscoring the need for skilled immigration, as well as the over-reliance many local post-secondary institutions have on international student tuition fees. For example, international students make up over 30% of full-time post-secondary students in Nova Scotia, but almost 11% chose not to return this year due to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Those who remained enrolled were consumed by anxiety and uncertainty as they waited months for clarity on things like postgraduate work permits, non-discretionary travel restrictions, and institutional COVID-19 readiness plans. More recently, students returning to Canada under a designated learning institution's COVID-19 readiness plan have been misinformed and relegated to substandard housing, where they are forced to quarantine for 14 days. I'm thinking specifically about what has been happening around Cape Breton University in Sydney, Nova Scotia. International students attending CBU have been slowly returning to the community and are being faced with inadequate housing supply at a time where they are also being forced to stay inside and quarantine. Similarly, students returning to institutions in Halifax are having to pay up to $2,000 out of pocket to quarantine in university overseen accommodations, in addition to their rent for housing that they are unable to use. These situations are tragic and have led many international students to believe that their well-being is not a priority for the government. Given this lack of support, it's possible that some international students may choose to return home or attend post-secondary in another country, rather than commit to Canada as their new home. Moving forward, it's important for the federal government to support international students. From opening up Canada's summer jobs to allowing international students to participate in an internship or co-op under their existing study permit, there are countless opportunities for the federal government to show international students they truly care. With that, I would like to thank the committee once again for the invitation to speak and represent the voice of students at St. Mary's University and across Canada. I look forward to answering any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Madame Jennifer Watts, Chief Executive Officer of Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia. Madam Watts, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you for the invitation to speak to the committee today. I'm also speaking from Mi'kmaq and would like to recognize I'm on the ceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm the CEO of Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, and we're a full-service delivery agency that offers settlement services, language training, employment services, business development, employer support, and many wonderful community integration programs. We have served newcomers in our province for over 4 decades, and last year we served 10,000 clients and delivered both pre- and post-arrival programs. I'd like to offer you the perspective of the impact of COVID on a settlement agency. The first thing I'd like to speak about is the critical role of technology in rapidly disseminating information and continuing the delivery of service to our clients. We were able to pivot and offer practically all of our programs virtually and have identified many interesting and new emerging promising practices. But there are vulnerable populations that will be left behind because of the lack of digital literacy skills, access to tech equipment, lack of access to internet, either due to cost or simply it does not exist in rural or small centers. Access to high-speed internet needs to be identified as a fundamental necessity and right to keep one's family and community safe, to further education, and to find a job. Suggestions within the settlement sector are to develop a multidimensional national plan to support at-risk newcomer populations with low digital literacy and no access to technology. There's also a call to create a national technology capital replacement budget for the settlement sector to ensure current service providers have the capacity to continue and to expand a hybrid approach to delivery service. The second thing I'd like to highlight is we've seen an increase in racism and racist attacks, particularly focused on Asian and Black populations, that has increased their vulnerability. Engagement of all levels of government is needed. The double impact of racism and COVID has becoming clearer and is very concerning. In the settlement sector, we recognize the need to increase our capacity and further develop skills to respond to increasing racism and points to the need for us to really develop a national capacity building approach as well, which includes training and tools to increase settlement staff ability to appropriately support newcomers experiencing racism. The third point is the increase in gender-based violence and domestic violence we're seeing happening in our country. This is happening, I know, across all segments of Canadian society. And IRCC has seen the importance of this issue and has supported in developing specific programs. But we would like to highlight and I think make clear how important this area of work is in terms of furthering our capacity and resources, and particularly working with the communities that we're engaged with. The fourth area is the importance of family reunification through the family class process, as it strengthens the family unit, the family's integration success in Canada, and more spaces are welcomed. Family class reunification supports families who arrive under all immigration pathways. And what it does is not only supports the family, but also supports the Canada's economy and the integration of many people into the labor market. And we see that particularly during the crisis such as the pandemic, how important family connections are. The fifth area is the impact of COVID on privately sponsored refugees and their sponsors. ISENS is a sponsorship agreement holder, so we receive about 100 spots a year, and we support that through family reunification with people who are here in our province. We have heard from co-sponsors the many painful impacts that have resulted from the closures of visa posts overseas, from the difficulties of people in refugee camps receiving documentation, sometimes have to travel long distances and are unable to get back to camps. For people here who are co-sponsors and have been holding apartments for months on end, anticipating people will arrive, and they have not been able to travel. So there's a whole series of things that are impacting the privately sponsored refugee network. We would encourage the government to continue to support this very important area of humanitarian response, and to continue to work with the co-sponsors and with the settlement, the sponsorship agreement holder network to resolve these problems. We'd also like to raise the principle of additionality, that although we certainly support privately sponsored refugees, the very important and continued support for government-assisted refugees, to see that this is an area that really responds to Canada's humanitarian responsibilities and obligations. So certainly would want to see those numbers continue to be supported, and particularly during this time of COVID. We have been receiving GARs since July, and it's been a very important commitment on our part, and we think the federal government of Canada.
Sorry for interrupting, Madam Watts. Your time is up. You will get an opportunity to talk further when we go into the round of questioning. So with this, now we will start our first round of questioning. We will start with Mr. Hallen. Mr. Hallen, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. Mr. Mahmoud, you touched on a few points that I think are very important. You talked about your own experience with delays with getting your mother here, who's obviously elderly, and about the effects of it on mental health. We've heard from many witnesses heartbreaking, gut-wrenching experiences of their own that have caused mental health issues such as depression and suicidal thoughts. And they're all due to the delays in the process. In your experience, how do you think Canadians are being affected by these delays, the processing times in relation to family reunification, both permanent immigration and temporary residents? And what kind of solutions do you think are available?
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I think I've already touched on the problems that currently we're facing as a country overall. Canada is an immigration-friendly country. When I say that, that means we pride ourselves in being one of the best countries out there that can attract immigrants from all across the world. However, this pandemic has showed that we are not ready for it, unfortunately. Families that are not being united with each other, the complete seizure of offices and close down of offices around the world, of visa centers closed down. Immigration Refugee Board, for the time being, was on a halt. Our system was completely shut down. These problems may come again in our lifetimes, and we should be ready for it. We have no excuse for not to be ready for it. I think what this committee and the government can do is implement such plannings that can, in future, we can avoid such type of issues. For example, I'd spoken about the triage system. We can fast track some applications, and we can put some applications through the normal process. Obviously, we should reopen all visa centers across the globe, and we should make sure that obviously the health and safety is the priority there. And also, spousal application interviews can be held over the webcam, same way as we are currently conducting this meeting. We can do. We can certainly have online submission of packages. We're still sending paper-based applications. This is so 20th century. I think we can move with the time, and online submissions can take place for spousal applications as well. I can certainly go on and on about it, but I'm mindful of the time of this committee.
Thank you for that. Continuing on, Mr. Mahmood, we saw with the grandparents and parent sponsorship, we saw a delay before the pandemic. The program got put on pause. We saw it being reintroduced as basically the exact same thing. There was really no difference in it. And right now, I have many constituents and people from Canada asking me about this program because they're experiencing so much anxiety that no one knows like what stage we're at, when they're going to start being contacted. Now, in your experience, what is your opinion on this impact with the current lottery system in regards to the grandparents and parent sponsorship applications?
Well, to begin with, that's a very bad name, lottery system. This is certainly is where people are very fortunate to be in Canada, but what are we trying to impose on people, that there's a lottery system in Canada and you're all ready to try your luck? I would suggest that obviously we should revise the name and obviously start calling it something else that certainly puts some respect into people's lives and people who are bringing in their parents and grandparents. And it's very unfortunate that, Mr. Helen, that you've spoken about that, because unfortunately, I know circumstances or incidents where applicants passed away whilst they were waiting for their applications to be processed. This is very sad, and we must take this upon ourselves as a country, that we could have done better than processing parents and grandparents' visa applications in years, and in some cases a decade easily, that people were waiting for their applications. So maybe eliminate the lottery system, take it back to the old, everyone submits an application. Unfortunately, we're going to have to triage this process. We're going to have to find innovative ways of eliminating the extra time that it takes, and get these parents and grandparents come and see their children and grandchildren in Canada.
Thank you. And you know what? It's unfortunate that we couldn't get any real answers on timelines from the ministers or the officials. So now moving on, you touched base on a few different countries that you talked about. Like, are there cases that you've come across from certain countries where the government can assist in different ways?
Well, as I said earlier, a major part of my practice is dealing with immigration litigation, which is refugee hearings and refugee appeals. The affected minorities that come to mind immediately are the Ahmadis of Pakistan, Christians of Pakistan, Sikhs and Hindus in Afghanistan. For example, in Afghanistan, Sikhs are targeted for their faith. Their places of worship are destroyed.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Mahmood. Your
Yes.
time is up. We will now have to move on to the next member. Mr. Reagan, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. Floor is yours, Mr. Reagan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'm delighted that we have two witnesses from Mi'kma'ki, where I am as well. Ms. Watts, I'd like to ask you a few questions. First of all, in your work at ISANS, You mentioned that during the COVID pandemic, you've been able to pivot. Can you tell us about the changes in accommodations that were brought about in your organization? Those were most beneficial to newcomers, and are there any of them that you think you'll keep afterwards? And also, what ways do you think that ISANS has adapted most helpfully to in the case of the pandemic?
Thank you. Yes, we were able, because we had experience around delivering programs virtually, to pivot fairly quickly. And it was amazing that many of our programs were able to move in that direction. We developed specific programs for people who had low literacy, digital literacy skills and low literacy skills, and specific training for them to be able to understand how to use the computers. We also developed groups and delivered programs, particularly around mental health. So someone referred to earlier the incredible negative impact that the pandemic has had on people's mental health, to offering online wellness sessions and opportunities for people to gather in programming. So staff were able to, one, up their digital skills to be able to deliver the programs that they thought they might not have been able to, but also we were working very much with our clients to really assist them to be able to access the technology and then also learn how to use the technology. It was hard enough once they got it to be able to actually deliver the programming. So we did actually go back to delivering in-person service, and we brought back the people who are most vulnerable first, so people with the lowest literacy skills, to be able to come back. But since the past couple of weeks, because we had the spike again, we've had to go back to virtual delivery as well. Yeah.
When you speak of help from government in terms of digital literacy for newcomers, what do you envisage? Can you lay that out a bit?
So help it would come in a couple ways. We really appreciated, number one, having critical health information that's accessible, using infographics in plain language and in translation. So the Public Health Agency, that was not available at the beginning, but both the provincial and federal government became much better about that. And that, I think, is the key thing, being able to deliver their message directly to clients would be very helpful, rather than us having to figure that out and double check with them. We were able through IRCC to access PPE, particularly when we were receiving government assisted refugees. That was scary for us at the beginning. We did not have access to that. So it was a very large and important intervention on the part of IRCC staff to assist us with that. I would say the biggest challenge right now, and I would really like to underline for us and probably across Canada for settlement agencies, is access to affordable housing. It is critical for when people are coming in to find that. So anything, I know the federal government is working on that, but it cannot be underscored how difficult it is for us to really effectively settle people in our country when there's not affordable housing or there's housing affordability. So that goes across the huge spectrum of people coming in as refugees, but also coming in as provincial nominees or under any economic stream. The housing situation is critical. So that would be a huge assistance to us in terms of support for settling people, is dealing with that issue around housing affordability.
As you know, the government's looking for innovative approaches that might assist newcomers and looking at how to better support the integration process. Uh, as you deal with issues like you mentioned, capacity, like the need for capacity building to support people dealing with COVID and racism, how do you see the government dealing with that to assist you? Also, in your view, is increasing employment support and leveraging new technology the right path forward for IRCC and for the government? What are your thoughts on that?
So I just got off a phone call just before this where there was a discussion with the National Settlement Council on anti-racism. And it was an amazing conversation that's historic, I think, for us as a settlement community that was assisted by the settlement agencies and IRCC. So very excited to see the potential resources around that, and the funding for that is very important. There's also a very interesting program that certainly for us, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot has been very important, but also this move into the economic mobility program, where you're seeing refugees being able to come into the country through existing economic streams. So it's not through the refugee stream, but actually being able to, because they have the skills and experience to, with some assistance and some administrative, support, be able to access through those regular economic programs. So that's a really critical and very interesting area that we see the federal government is offering some support in. I would also say that any support around technology is huge. And as I said, both helping us to develop, increase, and maintain our capacity, but just generally really supporting access to broadband internet across the country is key. That it's fundamental that people have that ability to access those resources, especially when we see things like the libraries and public places that people may go to. If when in non-COVID times, when that's not available, it effectively shuts down people from their access to information from their government and from their resource groups in the community.
Just very quickly, to what degree does putting a citizenship test and ceremonies online assist?
That would be fabulous. That would be fabulous. Absolutely. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's my time.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to Madame Normandian. Madame Normandian, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I would like to ask a first question to Mr. Deschaslanen. You said that following a survey, 60% of students would like to stay in Canada after their studies, and I know that the labor market would like to take advantage of this qualified or skilled manpower. But we heard in committee that some students and French-speaking francophones from French-speaking immigrants from or students from Africa have not been allowed to stay. So have you heard of such cases? And if you have, do you think that we should change the criteria for student visas, especially if we want them to stay after their temporary stay?
Topic in terms of ensuring that international students that are keen and able to stay in Canada are given opportunities to do so. In terms of the specific example you mentioned, that's not something that I was necessarily aware of, although I'm very keen to connect with some of our colleagues from the Union étudiante de Québec in terms of what they've heard in terms of challenges for French-speaking international students that are attempting to stay in Canada. But I think the thing that we can do, study permits and the postgraduate work permit process can be very technical. But I think it's important to ensure that we're thinking about making that option for international students to stay as accessible as possible in order to make sure that we're remaining competitive next to countries like Australia and the United Kingdom in terms of attracting international students in the first place.
Merci beaucoup. J'aurais peut-être des questions. Thank you very much. I would like to ask a few questions from Mr. Mahmoud about the lottery system. Some people said that maybe the financial criteria could be abolished when there are families who are ready to help their relatives, their parents. So sometimes these people don't have the financial capacity to apply for a visa, but maybe they could be helped by their family in Canada.
Mr. Mahmoud, you are on mute. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So if I understand this correctly, your question is that that if there are parents and grandparents who could be sponsored here without any income qualification, is that your question? Is thank you very much. Okay. Now I do understand the problem with it being that Canada wants to make sure that it's protecting the people who are coming into the country and they're being supported by the family who are already here, whilst they're also taking care of their family who's here. Now, I don't think that's our biggest concern. I don't think that's the biggest challenge at the moment. There are people out there who are willing to support their families, are able to bring their family. However, what we can do is reduce the low income cutoff, which I think the government has done. I think that's a great job on their part. And we had no choice because currently, because of the pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs in various parts of the country. The problem really is the timeline, and really the issue is the complexity. I think that's something that the government needs to work on.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. So if we were to maintain the financial criteria and financial capacity of the sponsors, do you think there should be, if we cancel the lotto system, could we insist more on the financial capacity?
Yes, again, I think as far as the financial capacity is concerned, I think that's going to be a challenge for everyone at the moment. By reducing the low income cutoff would help, certainly, and that needs to be seen. And the government needs to streamline the applications that are currently in process. And this lottery system, the number of entries that we're going to get is going to further exacerbate the, the timeline and the lack of resources the government has at the moment.
Merci. Peut-être une dernière question sur
Last question. On the way we can send documents online. So could it be just at the end of the process that you provide the original documents and that until then you only provide copies?
The original documentation and the verification for it, I highly doubted how much that helps really with the current system and how things are being processed, the fast-paced nature of the business. So I don't think that the original is such a huge deal. So
sorry for interrupting, Mr. Mahmood. The time is up. We will now move on to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for their presentation. I'm going to first go to Mr. Castplain. On your presentation with respect to students, and particularly international students who has their post-grad work permit coming to an expiration or might have expired. Given that we're in a COVID environment, many of them may not be able to secure the employment to meet the requirements to apply for the PR. What do you think the government should do? Should they automatically provide an extension to these students?
Thank you for the question. I think that would definitely be one option. I think that postgraduate work permits are extremely technical, and to be safe, I'd be happy to provide comments to the committee in writing to make sure that there were details that were being included and considered. But I think the bottom line is that many international students have struggled to meet requirements needed for a postgraduate work permit, whether they've been studying abroad in their home country and unable to, or thinking they'd be unable to count certain parts of their degree towards that work permit, or in order to be able to actually secure Canadian employment opportunities that would satisfy requirements. So I think an extension would go a long way in terms of providing some flexibility for international students, especially at a time when I think we have to consider that, the primary concern for most students right now are the health of themselves and their family, and ensuring that they can start to set up their life and their career. So I think an extension could go a long way to support that, and be happy to provide some more detailed comments on that as well.
That would be very helpful if you could provide additional information. I'm also wondering, for the students that are already here, whose postgrad work permit may be expiring or have expired, because their work permit is not allowed to be renewed. And given their situation, they really basically have no choice but to leave the country. And that would mean that Canada would lose all of the talent to which we have with these students. Are you aware of any students who might have had their work permit expired or is about to expire?
I can tell you at my home institution here in Halifax, I am aware of a few students who I've met throughout my degree who have gone home and are not planning on coming back to Canada based on complications around their postgrad work permit, similar to the examples that you've mentioned. So I think there are a number of concerns here in terms of the decisions that international students or recent graduates are making at this time in terms of what the impact is going to be on Canada's ability to retain these students. And I think the disappointing component of all of this is that many international students, the vast majority that I've had the pleasure of knowing, would like to be able to stay in the communities that they're studying in or to stay in Canada more broadly. And so I think the example that you're raising is definitely something that we've heard of and is disappointing in terms of what that is going to mean for the future of those students and potentially the loss for the country as well.
Mhm. One of the things that the minister has said repeatedly is that no one would be impacted with their work permits, and that they would not be deported because of COVID. And so I put this question to both the minister and to the deputy last week to see whether or not they would indeed be willing to extend the work permit for postgrad students in this set of circumstances. There seems to be some indication that they're looking into it. So I think it'd be very important that if you come across with anyone whose work permit may be expiring or have expired, that they reach out to the government and perhaps to your member of parliament to ensure that there are provisions for them to be able to stay in Canada. I get it that some people might have left already, but there may be others who may not have left and are caught out in this situation right now. And it's important for the government to hear from these individuals so that we can find a path forward for them. I'd like to now turn to Mr. Mahmood, if I may, on the parents grandparents sponsorship. You're absolutely right. There are no other immigration stream to which people's ability to reunite with their loved one is based on the luck of the draw. And it's really shocking to me that's where we're at with respect to this application. And now, of course, in the face of COVID, and even without COVID, the high threshold on the requirements for the financial requirements is very taxing. And that means, you can only reunite with the loved ones if you have the ability to pay. And that just strikes me as wrong. In your personal set of circumstances, you were saying that you've been waiting for 6 months. Am I correct to understand that? To which your sponsorship for your parents, you've been able to get a sponsorship lottery and you're waiting for at least 6 months before you'll hear from the government on what the next process is. Did I hear you correctly on that?
No, as far as my personal circumstances are concerned, it's actually my mother who's not a British citizen or a Canadian citizen. For that, she needed a visa to come to Canada. She's applied for it, but current wait times, if we go on IRCC website, is about 6 to 9 months, I think, if I'm not wrong, and that keeps changing every day. So I think that's really long in the current circumstances, especially for family reunification.
I see. Sorry, I thought you meant that you actually had a lottery. I gather that you don't have a lottery then.
Not that lucky.
Not that lucky. And how long have you been waiting to try and reunite with your mom?
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Time is up. We will now move to our second round of questioning. And based on the time we are left for this panel, we will have 4 minutes each for Mr. Soraya and Mr. Daliwal. And then we will have 2 minutes each for Ms. Kwan and Madame Normandin. So we will start with Mr. Soraya. Mr. Soraya, you can start and you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You are on mute.
Yeah, you were right. I was on mute.
Yes.
Am I good now? Can you hear us? Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can. You can start, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Miss Bart, racism is the dirty word. Racism, what you talk about in the East Coast, the people like myself who came to the back in 1970s, we have gone through it. I have seen in the recent months in Markham Unionville, when people, I tell you one incident, a 57 years old Caucasian man was yelling at the Asian kid that you bringing the disease to this country. And a passerby intervened. And that 57 years old man noted the car number for that adult As soon as the adult passed away, he scratched the card for that person. I have done town hall meetings. I have done many other things. What you think, Ms. Bott? What can be done? It's never acceptable. It was never acceptable in the past. It's never acceptable today. And what can we do, Ms. Bott? What would you like to see us? How can we stand up to these thugs?
So as the federal government, it was very great to hear about the Secretariat of the federal government and its work, and understanding also what provincial governments are doing. But I think the very big thing is for all of us to understand our role and responsibility. And there are many actions that need to be taken place. So I think it's important that there's funding to support and empower groups who are experiencing this racism, so that they are able to speak their truth and talk about what that experience has been. I think it's just, a huge education effort on the part of all of us, wherever we may be working. Here in Nova Scotia, I've been working with some folks in Halifax in particular, but other provincial partners around a positive messaging campaign. So not waiting for the negativity and not always being on the back foot and having to respond, but to be very proactive in supporting communities that welcome, that bring people together, that speak about the positivity. Because I think if we're always dealing from a negative starting point, that is giving too much power away. And I think it's really, so I guess there's a variety of things we need to be doing and being engaged in. And federal support and funding, particularly for groups who are directly impacted, is key.
Thank you so much. And Brian, Mr. This question is for you mentioned it's 170,000 people worked for our economy in 2018. What can be done to what would the suggestions we have? Anybody can take it. Especially, I would like to start from Brian in St. Mary's University. What can be done to make sure we need these people? They speak the language, they understand the system, they're educated, they're young, they're hungry to get this thing. What can we do from this angle, from this federal MPs, to do to make sure they're successful in their pathway for immigration in the next coming years?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. I think when we speak specifically to employment for international students, there have been a number of concerns when it relates to the number of hours that international students are able to work under their study visas or study permits, limiting their ability to, develop connections with employers and really develop important networks that are going to allow them to start careers. So, that was something that was implemented by the government earlier on in April and May in terms of some of the initial pandemic funding and programs.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. We will now have to move on to our next member. Mr. Dhaliwal, you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed. Mr. Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all the presenters, and particularly I would like to thank Mr. Mahmood for bringing the minority issues around the globe, and I'm sure you know that Manmeet Kullar Foundation from your own town, we helped many Sikhs and Hindus to bring from Afghanistan. But thank you on that, Madam Chair. I'm going to carry on with the questioning. My good friend Bob Sroya on the other side was talking about the students. And as Madam Chair, international students contribute a great deal to Canada. And as a result, make excellent candidates to transition from student to permanent residence to citizenship. Approximately 11,000 students became permanent residents last year. My question will be to the presenters, what more can be done with regard to finding pathway to PR, from PR to citizenship for these international students? Anyone can start.
I'm happy to jump in and just wrap up the comments that I was making there in terms of, I think, allowing students to make stronger connections with employers during their time at post-secondary institutions. I think that we're seeing more and more students beginning to understand the value of utilizing connections in order to be able to find jobs and to be able to build careers. And I think international students are currently at a disadvantage to our domestic students in terms of being able to access all components of post-secondary institutions at this time. So I think increasing opportunities for international students to engage in co-op or work integrated learning programs are going to be critical. And as well, expanding things like the Canada Summer Jobs Program to include international students, I think will go a long way to international students being able to see their lives and their careers taking place in Canada.
I'd like to.
Sure, go ahead.
Can I say yes?
Go,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
also add that one of the things that the settlement sector has been very clear about is the fact that we're not funded under our IRCC funding unless you already have PR status. And so for us, if we were able to work with international students and with with refugee claimants and migrant workers, that would open up a huge opportunity for them to access the considerable services, expertise, and staff that we have to support them. So that is something that we've been asking IRCC and the government to look at, is to open up that eligibility so that we're actually able to work with people who are on temporary temporary residence or work permits.
And the students could only work 20 hours, and we made it unlimited, time for them to help themselves. Do you see that those unlimited hours help students, or do you see anything else beside this we can do? And you mentioned summer jobs. And
Yes, I think the unlimited hours have been extremely helpful. This is obviously a very challenging time for young people to find employment, but the opportunity for international students to be able to pursue jobs and career options that they otherwise weren't able to has been extremely helpful. And I think continuing to expand those opportunities to allow international students to develop connections through summer job programs and additional funding will be extremely important moving forward.
And we have also provided 50% of the time that they will spend overseas when they are doing online studies, will give them the credit up to 1 year. Do you see that is also a help the whole system, or are there pros and cons of that?
I think it's definitely been well received. It's alleviated some of the immediate concerns that we've been hearing about from international students.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. Thank you. We will now move on to Madame Normandian. Madame Normandian, you will have 2 minutes for your round of questioning. Please proceed.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. I will continue with my questions for Mr. Chastelin. I would like to know if you've heard from students or employers with regards to internships. Sometimes it takes a while to do the paperwork. You need to get a work permit. You have to do an study of impact on the workplace, especially for longer-term internships. Have you heard about concerns on the ground, and do you have any comments to do to that effect?
This is a very important question, and I thank you for raising this topic. We've heard very often from international students, it's very challenging to secure internships within your field of study as a student itself. But we've heard from international students, good friends of mine that have had opportunities to work at provincial legislatures that have barely been able to receive the paperwork in time in order to take part in those internships. And so I think something that the federal government can do moving forward is to ensure that international students have access to co-ops and internships and other work integrated learning opportunities underneath their study permit to eliminate any of this additional paperwork or time that's required to receive an additional work permit to take part in these activities.
Merci beaucoup. Et peut-être rapidement sur la question de la biométrie.
And then about biometrics, there are some countries which don't have these biometric centers. So should we do this when they arrive to Canada for countries where they cannot do it?
It's not a topic that I'm necessarily an expert on, but what I can tell you is that that is a barrier for international students that are looking to come to Canada. And I think as a country, we should be doing everything we can to be allowing international students to come here and study if they're willing and able to do so.
Je voyais Monsieur Mahmoud hocher la tête. Je ne sais pas s'il a le temps de répondre.
I don't know whether Mr. Mahmoud
have our last round of questioning by Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 2 minutes. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back quickly to Mr. Mahmood, you were just finishing. How long have you been waiting for your family to reunite?
It's been about a month that I've applied for our application, but current timeline is about 6 to 9 months.
Okay, so this is the first time you've tried for the lottery.
No, I have not applied for a lottery. No.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Only applied for a visit visa.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to Ms. Watt. On the issue around racism, in my own riding, in and around Chinatown, we've had some horrible incidents where the Chinese Cultural Center's window has been smashed and it's been defaced and a whole variety of activities. One of the issues that people have raised is that often people are not comfortable going to the police with the reporting. And particularly, suggestions were made where people can perhaps go to a NGO in the riding and perhaps in the community so that they can do the reporting that way. I wonder what your thoughts are and whether or not the government should make steps easier for people to make the report of those kinds of hate crimes.
Yes, absolutely. One of the programs that we did, particularly with the killing of George Floyd and then the Black Lives Matter, because in Halifax we have quite a strong historic African Nova Scotian community that was also impacted by this. We set up opportunities for people to gather, particularly mothers and parents who are very concerned about their children. So offering, I think it's incumbent on us, the settlement agencies, to offer safe spaces so people can come together. And we did mobilize that. It was difficult because we were doing that virtually, but we did do that. I think also it is a discussion with engaging with your local police authority and officials on a regular basis and understanding about the reporting of racism, because sometimes that's the thing we found is that people say, this incident happened to me. Did you, work with the police officer? I did, but I don't really know what happened to
Sorry
it.
for interrupting, Ms. Watts. Time is up. With this, our first panel comes to an end, and on behalf of all the members, I want to thank all the witnesses for appearing before the committee and providing your important testimonies. If there is anything you would like to bring it to the committee's notice, you can send in a written submission if you didn't get the opportunity to bring it out. Thank you once again. And with this, I will suspend the meeting for a minute so that we can have a sound check for one of the panelists for the second panel. So the meeting is suspended for a minute and we will come back. Thank you. In this panel, we will be hearing from the officials of the Immigration, Refugees, Citizenship Canada officials. And I would like to welcome Marianne Campbell-Jarvis, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy. Also, we have with us Fraser Valentine, Assistant Deputy Minister, Settlement and Integration, and Mr. Daniel Mills, Assistant Deputy Minister for Operations. Thank you to all the officials for appearing before the committee. We have been keeping you quite busy, and I think this is your third appearance in the last 2 weeks. So thank you for being here. We will start with Marianne Campbell Jarvis to give opening remarks. You have 5 minutes to give your opening remarks. Madam Jarvis, you can please start.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As officials at IRCC, we have responded, adapted, and transformed our work since the beginning of the pandemic in order to serve our clients better while protecting the health and safety of our communities and of our staff. Nous avons dû rapidement équiper.
We had to quickly equip our workforce at home so they could continue their important work remotely. Processing never stopped. For many of our employees, especially in the area of operation, this adjustment was complex. So for lots of them, especially in the area of operation, it was complex. For our employees who work with settlement agencies, we quickly innovated.
It's echoing. It's like you're listening. I'm hearing the double sound, so I'm not getting anything.
Okay, we will have a look. Mr. Clerk, if you can check on the interpretation.
Ms. Campbell-Jarvis, sorry to interrupt. When you're speaking in English, could you please make sure that the language of interpretation is set to English? And when you speak in French, could you please make sure that the language of interpretation is set to French, if possible? This should improve the sound at our end, if you could. Thank you so much.
I apologize, Madam Chair and Clerk. I had actually pressed the button to French when I spoke French. I will repress it again and hope for the best. Je m'excuse, je suis vraiment. OK.
Thank you.
J'ai mis sur la bouton en français. J'aimerais continuer.
May I continue? Do you agree?
Yes.
Parfait. Pour nos employés travaillant auprès des organismes d'aide à.
For our employees who work with settlement agency, we quickly innovated to create an electronic signature tool which allowed funding negotiations to be finalized, ensuring continuity of service to newcomers. Our call center agents who needed to employ new software and new hardware at home in order to continue to do their work effectively. Early work included prioritizing the processing of applications to help Canadians who needed to return to the country, those of vulnerable populations, and applications from essential workers, including agricultural workers, who are crucial to maintaining Canada's food supply. I won't detail the work that went into this, but it did include simplifying the application process, facilitative measures, and expediting processing. And I think it is important to note from a client service lens that no applications in progress were closed or refused because of documents missing or inability to complete the application process in time. This also means that processing can take longer and the files might be touched multiple times more than in regular times.
Deputy Minister, have had the opportunity at this committee to share some of the facilitative measures we have put in place. So today, I will just quickly highlight a few that have helped us move the yardsticks ahead while keeping our staff and our clients safe. Among them, the creation of a public policy to allow in Canada asylum claimants via email, removing the need to apply in person. Second, exempting key essential populations from biometric collections, given the closure of the VAC centers. Creating a temporary public policy allowing visitors to apply for work permits without having to leave Canada. We've also had in Canada virtual late landings, meaning those already in Canada and ready to become permanent residents could be landed without an interview. We have provided extra flexibility and funding stability to ensure that settlement organizations could deliver services remotely. Many settlement providers shifted to online or remote delivery, which we all agree will become a permanent feature of the settlement program going forward. We have also helped to procure personal protection equipment for settlement agencies. We've talked a little bit about our virtual citizenship ceremonies. The ceremonies via video conference platform for over 43,000 candidates for citizenship between April and November of this year. And just a couple of weeks ago, we moved to offering online citizenship testing to accommodate those who have been waiting to take the knowledge test to become Canadian citizens. These initiatives, along with a number of facilitative measures for international students and the designated learning institutions in Canada that rely on them, exemptions to travel restrictions that allow family members of Canadian citizens and permanent residents to enter Canada for non-discretionary reasons.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Jarvis. Your time is up. You'll get an opportunity during the round of questioning to touch further on these. We will start our first round of questioning with Ms. Dencho. Ms. Dencho, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You
Thank
can
you,
please
Madam
proceed.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the officials for all of your hard work over the last number of weeks and months. Really appreciate you being here again for the third time in the last number of weeks. I have a number of questions today for you. Just about the parents and grandparents program, the committee has heard several expert witnesses and their feedback on this lottery, and there's a lot of different opinions of how it could be changed. But I'm wondering if the department has the technology capacity to create a weighted grandparents and parents a lottery system or otherwise, but a system, if let's say we'll use the lottery as an example, but a weighted version of it that can consider if people have applied 3, 4, 5 times. Because right now what we're seeing is new applicants are being treated the same as those who've been hoping to get their parents into the country for years. So I'm just wondering if you have the capacity to do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. There is always a lot of interest in the parents and grandparents program. That's a very interesting suggestion from the member, Madam Chair, about the weighting and taking into account past applications. I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's a really interesting one and one that I think merits further look.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that would be great. Be great news for grandparents and parents if that could be considered. Just switching gears here a little bit regarding family reunification, the extended family reunification scheme that was brought forward a few months ago to service particularly those separated by the American-Canadian border closures. Can you tell me how many applicants applied during that October 8th and 9th date? And of those, how many are awaiting processing?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's another good question, and I know the government was very pleased to be able to offer that possibility of extended members. As for the exact number, I'm going to turn to my colleague, Mr. Mills, who will have the processing figures for you. Mr. Mills.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je n'ai pas le chiffre pour le...
For travel exemption related to families or extended families, and in 80% of cases, we have processed it in 14 days as we said we would.
I didn't have my translation on, but I think I got it. You said that 60,000 applied. Was that 60,000 individual applications? Because I know at times people were panicking a little bit, weren't hearing back, so they would reapply every day. They're probably still doing it. So do you know if that's 60,000 specific people or just 60,000 applications went through and that could be duplicates of someone?
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente. En effet, c'est 60 000
Yes, it's 60,000 40,000 emails we've received. As part of this, there are duplicate or triplicate requests. Some people are resending the information or information that was missing. We've received almost 40,000 individual requests for travel authorization.
80, and I wasn't able to do the math, but how 80% of the 60,000 who applied, then how many is that remaining exactly? What would be the 20% of that 60,000? Maybe someone on the committee is better at quicker math than me, but what would that be?
Madame la Présidente,
Madam Chair, I don't have the exact number that for those requests, but we've received 60,000 requests, which represent 40,000 individual requests. We've approved 28,000 up to date.
3,000 applied, and then 80% approved. Okay, so there's about 10,000, a little less than 10,000 outstanding, maybe more like 7,000. Is that about correct?
Madame la Présidente,
Madam Chair, there will be between $8,000 and $10,000 that still have to be processed.
That. I wanted to ask about adoption, just the remaining minute and a bit here. I brought to your attention a few times about the Muth family, and there were other complicated adoption cases. The Muth specifically weren't able to get on that repatriation flight in May back to Canada, and were stranded. And then their daughter, of course, had a terrible medical needs and was dying, and they had to go to Barbados. Thankfully, Barbados took them in, and they were stuck there until about last week. So it was about 8-9 months. I just have concerns about that, and if that's how Canadians kind of get treated when they go abroad to adopt children. This one was sick. Just wondering, and I would really like a confirmation from you of how we can improve that process, and that you are looking to ensure that never happens again.
No, thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I will turn to my colleague, Mr. Mills, on the adoption question, but I would say that it's certainly a process that we do care about, and we are looking into these situations and learning from them. But Mr. Mills, would there be anything that you would wish to add?
merci Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Here's what I can say. I agree with what my colleague has mentioned. Adoption is a topic that is dear to our soul. In each case that we manage, we have lessons.
Is up. We will now move on to Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question, again, thank you, Madam Campbell Jarvis, for your presentation. I'm going to continue with the PGP, Parents and Grandparents Program. If I recall my memory, it's my understanding that prior to 2015, when Conservatives were in power, there were 5,000 applications were taken, and it was first come, first serve, and people had to line up sometimes for weeks before the application deadline in Mississauga. So people with more money and easy accessibility had the chance to get into the line and get to those 5,000 applications. And since then, when we came forward, if I look at the average number of applications that now your department or government has made a promise to accept is accepting 4 times more applications. Could you give me a difference between a system that was 2014 and the system now, past 2015?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I would have to look back at the precise numbers, but the member is correct. The Parents and Grandparents Program has certainly been through a number of different iterations. We have tried a number of different approaches, and the demand for the program has always been quite significant and continues to grow and rise as people seek to bring parents and grandparents with them. But we can return with some of the numbers to show on that pattern, and I can follow up.
And how about the accessibility and the responsible program management? Do you see any differences between then and now, or would you come back on that one as well?
I could come back with further details on some of the structure and the approach if that's helpful.
Thank you. And when Minister was here, Minister mentioned that the departmental capacity went from 38% to 90%. What choices had to be made to make sure our immigration system could still function along crucial lines of business?
Thank you. I'll turn to Mel.
Madam Jarvis, you are on mute.
Merci, Madame Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd answer his question. What allowed us to go from 38 to 90% for employees is that we've equipped employees to work from home at the beginning of the pandemic in order to ensure that our employees and our clients have their health and safety made a priority. We have equipped employees with new technologies, which allowed us over the following months after March to increase our processing capacity from 38 to 90% by giving the equipment to employees and to give training, and by ensuring that we have processes that are more linear and that allow digitization of some files so that they could be managed remotely.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very grateful to the IRCC employees, whether they're in Montreal or anywhere, because our office is considered the busiest in Canada, whole of Canada, and thank you for that. But one problem that I see that we are facing right now is sometimes when the people fill in the application, not necessarily they are lawyers or experts to fill in the application. Someone else fills in the application for them and they forget just one tick mark. Have you ever been rejected visa by any other country? So then they forget to take that because it wasn't Canada, it might be England, Australia, or USA. And it was my understanding the department brought in a policy that minor error or mistake like that will not give them a 5-year ban. But I still see many of those applications are given a 5-year ban. Would you comment on that? The policy moving forward and how we can resolve that particular, little mistake on the application is penalizing those candidates.
Thank you. That's a really important question into how we're processing. I'm going to ask Mr. Mills to answer that question as to how we're handling that, in particular during COVID. We've made some adjustments, which I know he'll tell you about.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During COVID, we've implemented different processes so that we would not return requests if there's minor information missing. For example, if there are documents missing, we don't reject any requests. Of course, the processing.
We will now move on to Madame Normandian. Madame Normandian, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You may please proceed.
Madam Chair, we can't hear you. You might have to check your voice. At least I could.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I do, Madam.
Okay.
Chair. Thank you.
Madame Normandian, you can please proceed.
Thank you. I will first start by thanking the public servants, not only because it's the third time that you're here in committee, but for the first time we have clear answers that give us a lot of information on what's happening, and that allows us to better answer back to our citizens and to explain how things work. And maybe it helps in some cases for them to be more patient. With regards to this, I'd like to start with this question. Do you think that in the future would be a good thing to be more transparent with regards to what's happening in your department and to use MPs to better transmit information? For example, 60,000 requests for IMM 006 in October, as of October. Maybe you weren't expecting this, and if we had known from the start, we could have better explained the situation and maybe reduce expectations from our constituents. Do you think that involving us more would help, and the fact that there will be more transparency would help as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for the question. I really appreciate this. First of all, we are very proud and we're pleased to be here for the third time in committee. And we try to give you clear information and transparent information. We have a lot of respect for parliamentarians and the how Parliament works. I hope that our information can help you with the next steps of your study. Personally, I have the opportunity to read the recommendations. Thank you. With regards to the study and the recommendations, I'd like to know, what are you expecting from the study? I'll give you an example with two different visions that are opposing themselves. Would be more useful for your work that parliamentarians write objectives that are more general, or would it be more useful to have very specific requests on certain things that should be changed at IRCC, or a bit of everything? Would it be better? Do you prefer general objectives or very precise things that should be changed? For example, which are about 179B in the regulations. If we need to change this, that's very precise, as opposed to facilitating, giving visas in general. And that would be a more general objective. What would be more useful for you?
For the question, Madam Chair. Really, we're interested in what the committee deems useful, and look forward to reading the report and the findings. In the meantime, we hope to the best of our ability that we've been able to convey the innovation, the effort, the adaptation that IRCC has undertaken throughout the pandemic to better respond to our clients.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. One thing that was mentioned quite often in committee is that migration to an online system will help a lot in the future, and it would have helped a lot during the pandemic. How confident are you with the implementation of an online system? How long it could take? Can we expect that all business lines at IRCC would be covered by an online system? Can you give us an idea as to what's going on that front?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. There's lots of dynamism at play in the system, both in terms of travel as well as IRCC system. I turn to my colleague, Mr. Mills, for additional information on that subject.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Effectivement,
Thank you, Madam Chair. having an online system, an online process would certainly help. What we did during the pandemics allowed us to limit the number of documents, the paper documents that we used, and we undertook the digitalization of our system so that we could process these demands, these applications. We're working very hard so that we have systems which, in the short term, will allow us to process all kinds of applications.
On to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. Ms. Kwan, please proceed. Mute. You are on mute, Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I know that some witnesses suggested the idea of a weighted system for the parents-grandparents lottery. I just want to point out that back in 2017, for example, when the lottery system first was introduced, 100,000 people submitted their interest to apply. If we go to a weighted system, and because there are only so many spots, you could, theoretically create a scenario where only the people who apply would be able to enter the draw. That means there are no new applications that would be allowed for submission. So, I appreciate the sentiment, but really the best option in going forward, in my view, is to make sure that there's no cap. Otherwise, you effectively go back to the previous system of what the Conservatives have done, is basically capping the number of applications with the weighted system. And I don't think that's really what we want to achieve. Okay, so I like to ask the officials this question. Last year, 68,800 spouse, common law, and children were admitted to Canada. And this year, the minister's target is 49,000 decisions for the same stream. So does that mean that this could the officials advise if this 49,000 include both negative and positive decisions?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I'll turn to Mr. Mills to respond to that on the decision-making piece.
Oui, bonjour. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 49,000 are final decision applications. So it is up until December the 31st. So it's for a final decision.
Madame la Présidente, je vais devoir...
Madam Chair, I will have to come back to the committee, but from what I understand, it's 49,000 decisions. I am not sure whether they're positive and negative, but I will make sure. Thank you.
Whether or not they're positive or negative, because otherwise it would mean that the overall number of admissions would likely be lower if it includes negative decisions as well. I wonder if the officials know what is the percentage of the applications in the system that are being processed right now are inland versus outland applications.
Yeah, I'll turn to Mr. Mills if we have that percentage, and if not, Madam Chair, we'd be pleased to follow up on the member's question.
Merci, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can tell you that at this time, the difference between in Canada and internationally, the percentage is 40% in Canada and 60% in the world.
Okay, and so how many of them are being processed that are inland and how many are being processed that are outland? Maybe I can get those numbers from the officials if I can actually get the breakdown, both in percentage and actual numbers of how many have been received by RCC and how many have been processed. That would be very helpful. I'd like to just turn to the issue of dual intent. If someone applies with dual intent, they can't be denied simply on the grounds of having dual intent. However, it is possible that by virtue of having dual intent, the bar to convince an immigration officer that they will leave Canada according to Section 179B is more difficult. That seems to be playing out in evidence with a number of families who've been rejected. Dual intent do not do anything to negate 179B. And if you have a loved one in Canada, would that not put you at a disadvantage at trying to convince the officer that you will indeed leave Canada after your visa is due?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. With respect to dual intent, it is recognized, as the member has noted, that it's perfectly reasonable to have a dual intent. Many people do come as temporary residents with the hope to stay. The issue, though, is that in law, there has to be a strong commitment to leave at the end. We need to know that that the temporary resident, if they are not successful in their permanent resident application, that they would leave. I don't, in terms of the grounds that the member has raised, the agent will assess the full range of measures, not one particular instance.
I wonder if IRCC have any stats historically or previously to show that people who have dual intent and received their TRV and then ended up not leaving the country. Do you have stats to that effect that you can share with the committee?
I do not have those stats at my fingertips, Madam Chair. I would be pleased to take that back and see what we do have available.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful because I think that the premise.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Time is up. Yes, Ms. Jarvis, we would appreciate if you can provide us those numbers which the member has requested. We will
Sorry,
now.
Madam Chair, sorry, can I just interject for 1 second? Could I also have those numbers broken down by country as well?
Thank you. We will now proceed to our second round of questioning. And Ms. Tenjo, you have 5 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can I have the committee's confirmation that any data that they provide to individual members of the committee are provided to all members of the committee?
The data, whatever the officials provide, will come to the clerk, and that will be distributed to all the members.
Great, I appreciate that. Expired COPRs. Let's talk about that for a little while. So my understanding from the last couple of times we've spoken about this, there's about 10,000 that are expired abroad. 6,000 have been contacted by the department. 1,000 of those have been provided travel documents, and about 675 of that 1,000 have actually traveled. I'm sure that's updated since last week, but that's approximately my understanding of the issue. Is that about correct?
Madam Chair, that does sound very familiar, but I will turn to Mr. Mills for further confirmation.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Oui, effectivement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The member is correct, but the number of confirmation of permanent residence is 14,000.
Troubling situation. I was just reviewing a letter submitted by sort of an advocacy group that started up for these individuals, and they pointed out that, and I just wanted confirmation about this. So you've been contacting all these, I guess about 14,000 folks, but my understanding is they've also been asked to, they've been asked by your government first and foremost to apply through this web form, and then they're contacted. So can you just sort of run me through why that is? Like if they've applied on the web form, why do they need to be contacted to confirm if they want to come? Like, I'm just thinking they probably wouldn't have applied with the web form if they didn't want to come. And I'm just wondering if that's sort of an additional step that's unneeded.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question, and it's a good question. I think this is a whole new line of business since COVID for us and uncharted territory. Mr. Mills, would you like to provide further details on the actual process, please?
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente. Donc, effectivement,
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a new system which allows us to answer their needs, but we want to protect the Canadian security. So when people want to come to Canada, we are very happy to welcome them, but we have to make sure that they have a quarantine plan, that it is well detailed, and that their travel documents, medical documents, and passports are still valid. And that's why we want them to validate these documents before they come.
The biomedical or the medical application they have to sort of reapprove. But my understanding is those that the medical part, it can be very, very costly. And I think I had asked last time if you would consider, since they had good health 9 months ago, given extraordinary circumstances, could we sort of just use their former one, even if it's a bit expired? So I'm sure you're considering that. But further on this letter that they wrote to our committee and to you, they mentioned that when you contact them, you ask for a lot of additional information. So they mentioned you want documents showing where they live, address, lease agreement, plans to work in Canada, proposed travel itinerary, an additional medical exam, as you mentioned. So it sounds like they're being asked sort of all the same questions that they would have already provided before. And I'm just wondering if that's kind of part of the problem. Like if they applied and were approved, can't we just take their approved applications before and sort of approve them now and allow them to come?
Madam Chair, it's a good question. One contextual point is, as we have these coppers, that actually means that the permit has expired a year ago. So quite a bit of time may have passed. And in the context of the pandemic, we are wanting to verify that we have the relevant detail to protect health of everybody involved. Mr. Mills, I don't know if there's further comments that you wish to make in this space to help answer the member's question.
non, effectivement, Madame la Présidente.
No, you're right. It's just that permanent residence confirmations expired. They were given a year ago, and we just want to make sure that all the information that was given a year ago is still valid. And we want to protect the safety and security of Canadians. Merci.
Time is up. We will now. Thank you. We will now proceed to Ms. Dillon. Ms. Dillon, you have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente. Je vais commencer par vous poser la question.
I'll start by asking you the question. Many newcomers or potential newcomers at the beginning of the pandemic were caught in difficult situations where they had the permanent residency, but because of the pandemic, they weren't able to travel. The longer they waited, their COPR expired. What are you doing to ensure that these people are protected? And what choices have you made to help in such a situation? Thank you.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the members mentioned, for the COPR, with the pandemic, we had to adapt quickly and adapt our processes. First of all, in April, we have reviewed the COPR that were about to expire for where the medical part was about to expire. We looked at the different files and we proactively gave an extension for these medical files for 6 to 12 months. This allowed the permanent resident to eventually travel to Canada. Since April, as I've mentioned earlier, about 14,000 applications or of CPR have expired. We have contacted 6,000 people to tell them that they could still come to Canada because we had proactively extended their medical file, or we indicated that they were allowed to travel to Canada. About 4,000 people still need to be reached. We've done this in a rigorous way last week. We've communicated with another 500 people, and we will do the same thing this week. We're going at a good clip, and we hope to go through this quickly and communicate with all of them in a reasonable time frame. Great, thank you. My next question, I'd like to talk about the efficiency of your operations. You've done this in the past, but the government is reviewing the different paths so that we don't do anything more than once. Can you tell us what you've done to ensure to visitors to present an application without leaving the country? Are there other departments or actually other parts of immigration that could also use this approach? Thank you for your questions. I'd like for my colleague, Mr. Mills, to answer your question. Thank you, Madam Chair. In some fields, what we've done in the fall with regards to students, for example, we've established a two-step process that was implemented to allow students to start studying remotely. We wanted to give them a two-step approval. We've validated the first step, which was their eligibility to come here. We've sent over 62,000 letters to students, allowing them to start their studies in Canada remotely. And then we've continued with the normal processing of these requests. This way of doing had to be put in place quickly. We had to innovate to ensure that for service to customers, that it would be beneficial for universities and students that wanted to come study in Canada.
We will now proceed to Madame Normandin. Madame Normandin, you have 2.5 minutes for your round of questioning. You may please proceed.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question with a concrete example. One of my constituents called IRCC people. Since July 6th, his file has been accepted, his PR has been accepted, but he has still not received a confirmation letter for this, and that's been 4 or 5 months later. To your knowledge, are there many files where this is the case, where the file has been accepted, and even though there won't be any landing with an interview, would only be a letter, and then they will get their card, nothing is communicated to that constituent? Do you know if many files are at that step of the process? Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I'd like to ask my colleague, Mr. Mills, to answer the question with regards to processing and files. Mr. Mills? Thank you, Madam Chair. With what I know, I'm not aware of these cases. I hope that this is an isolated case, but I will be pleased to do a follow-up on that file. Our process is that each time an application is approved, we communicate with the applicant. During the pandemic, we do virtual admissions, so we have communicated with those that have a COPR. We've communicated with them to admit them virtually. I'm surprised by what you're saying, but I will be pleased to do a follow-up on this. Thank you. That's very much appreciated. Quickly, on visas, for countries for which visas is necessary and those for which only a VRT is requested, our criteria is often reviewed to go from needing or not needing a visa, and what justifies needing a visa for a country as opposed to another. Thank you for your question, Madam Chair. There are many considerations for visas. Certainly, it shows the relationship between two countries.
Ms. Jarvis, time is up. We will now move on to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 2.5 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you. Just to clarify the last question on data, could the officials provide TRVs approved versus denied for applications with dual intent, as well as the same thing for applications without dual intent, going back to the last 10 years, and then broken down by year and by country, please? On a different issue, the deputy minister previously confirmed that permit holders wouldn't be deported or lose status, but there has been no indication from IRCC that this is in fact the case. So does someone with an expired postgraduate work permit have implied status, even though it can't be extended in the vast majority of the cases? And for those who are in Canada with an expired or expiring PGWP, what are their options if someone is interested in hiring them? And are they out of luck if their work permit has expired? What happens if they have a job, but their PGWP has already expired? And I noted that there's a difference as well for those who are in Quebec. And I wonder if the officials can answer the same question for both people in Quebec and outside of Quebec.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. There's a lot in that question. A few things that I would like to raise to help respond to it. First, we are seized with this situation that has arisen as a result of the pandemic. As the Minister noted, the immigration levels targets and the interest in international students and the caliber of students becoming permanent residents, that was certainly noted by the Minister, and we've taken note. In terms of the expiration of the postgraduate work permit, that is a one-time permit, as I think the member knows. There are a few things in the interim. A person approaching the end of their expiration, we have encouraged them to consider applying as a visitor, as a temporary foreign worker, and that could be under the International Mobility Program or the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. Those are some options that do exist. To stay in the country, one of the flexibilities that we've introduced was the revocation period, and that actually would allow somebody a bit more time to reapply, to have status, and to perhaps pursue other options. But as I think the member has noted, Madam Chair, this is something that we are very seized with, and we are looking into this.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. We will now move on to Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, you have 5 minutes for your round of questionings. You can please start.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So, just in terms of, I want to continue along that note. One of the things that I always hear from people is that when they're here, sometimes the timing doesn't work out. They may have a job offer, that kind of stuff. So, would you just review again what their options are?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as I noted, we are seized with this new situation that we find ourselves in as a result of the pandemic. There are certainly some options in the interim. somebody could apply for a temporary foreign worker position that would require a labor market impact assessment, an LMIA, through our colleagues at ESDC. There is also the International Mobility Program with employer-specific and open work permits. There may also be opportunities depending on the status or the state, and there's so many different individual variables here. But for application to, say, one of the pilots or the provincial nominee. So there are some pathways that are open, and we are continuing to look into this situation going forward.
Thank you very much. And so I guess my other question, I know this is probably more of a long thing because there are provincial nominee programs and multiple pathways. But one of the things I hear from business quite a bit is that there's a lack of sort of a coordinated effort. And I'm just wondering in the future if that's not a possibility to try and help people understand, some of the issues of maybe a whole of government approach. I realize that the provinces may have an option, and I see it all the time when we've got kids that are graduating from college, university, they end up heading out to Newfoundland and Labrador or any other parts of Canada where their point total could be higher if they were in that particular area. My question is, what are the chances of a whole of government approach? When certain industries would be able to look at the need that they have there, and they could maybe come to government and say, "Listen, we're experiencing a shortage of 40 or 50 or 60,000 employees. Would we be able to work with you to help try and figure that out?" Versus trying to play one little program here, one there, and it becomes a bit of a complicated mess for businesses who are trying to fulfill jobs and roles that they have.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. The government has certainly focused on regional and some sectoral requirements, and we really see that through the pilot. So the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, the Rural and Northern Pilot, and the Provincial Nominee Program. A number of these economic programs really allow the tailoring of the specific need in that area. So the member noted Labrador and Newfoundland, so looking at what might be kind of the specific labor market requirements, and the provincial nominee program does enable that kind of targeting and that tailoring between that sort of perfect match between immigration and labor market need.
Okay, thank you. I got maybe one last question as we move forward here. One of the challenges, and I mentioned this to the officials last time they were there, and I kind of ran out of time, but I've got a number of technical operations in my riding through greenhouses, and as I said, some were deemed essential services during this pandemic. I would guess that all jobs would be essential services at some point. And so my question is, as we continue to loosen up and as things continue to move a little bit, my question in terms of applying for temporary visas for technical purposes, would there be some consideration if it would involve like new technology that's required by the business for them to understand, for them to implement, if it required some type of knowledge base because of equipment bought from out of country? If not, would the government not consider all of those things essential as we move forward? I realize that if it was food related, it was definitely essential. Sometimes it took a little bit of time to get that to work, but essentially, when people were investing in new plant and new equipment, it was to hire more people down the road and be more productive.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. In terms of essential services, on the Public Safety Canada website, there's an extensive list of critical and essential infrastructure, as well as most provinces and territories have their own list of essential and what is essential services, and those are triaged accordingly.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Jarvis. We will have to move to our next member. We will end this panel with 5 minutes from Ms. Martinez Farada. You have, Ms. Martinez Farada, you have 5 minutes for your round of questioning, and then with that, this panel will come to an end.
Sorry, Madam Chair. May I make a point of order before?
Yes, please. Yes, Ms. Kwan.
The questions. Thanks. I just want to make sure that I got a confirmation with the data request from officials so that the committee could receive it.
Yes, Ms. Jarvis has indicated that they will provide us the data. Ms. Jarvis, if you can send the requested information to the clerk of the committee, it will then be distributed to among all the members.
Madam Chair, we have taken note of the members' request and the detailed breakdown of what is being sought, and we will endeavor to provide that information.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. We will now proceed with round of questioning from Madam Martinez Ferreira. You can please start.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, et merci à l'ensemble.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the officials from the department. I also want to thank you for your being available to us so much. But I would like to come back to the education universities, education organizations that had to adapt to a different situation. They had to take some steps so that they could keep providing services. Are you going to yourself going to keep helping them because they're going to have to offer these services in 2021? Are you going to fund some of the programs they have so that you can help these people during the pandemic? Thank you for this question. We've had to change a lot of things during the pandemics. We are looking at all the benefits and all the issues we've found out. Now we are going to analyze our different process for different things like a citizenship ceremony with a virtual platform. So we're going to draw a lot of lessons from what we've heard, what we've seen and what we've done. I think, or we were a little bit afraid that it would seem less personalized, but everything that can improve services, we're going to keep it. So we're going to keep what we've done, which you're talking about transformations. It is obviously a department that where you had to improve a lot, to change a lot, and you have to leave your comfort zone very often. So you had to do this very quickly. You had to innovate, be it in biometrics or an extension of permanent residence or the virtual ceremonies, all kinds of things about citizenship and all the digitalization. But could you tell us in a few words what is the most important to keep so that you can increase your efficiency for immigration? Sorry about the background noise. That's the problem when you work remotely. Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a lot of changes that are very helpful. So we're just going to look at, what benefited our clients. I don't know whether my colleague, Mr. Mills, would like to add a few examples. Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I could add is that the citizen test that is now virtual online, we launched that about a week ago, and results are excellent. So this is something that is going to help us have all these tests online, so people won't have to come to an office. So we'll be able to accommodate all these people wherever they are in Canada. So
Time is up. With this, our panel comes to an end. And on behalf of all the members of this committee, I want to thank Ms. Jarvis, Mr. Mills, and Mr. Valentine for appearing before the committee, and hope to receive the information which the members have requested from you. Thank you for all the hard work which you have always been doing on behalf of all Canadians, but especially during this very difficult year. And as with today's news, that soon we will have some vaccine on the shores of this great country. I hope and pray that the next year will be a better year for all of us. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Please pass it on to all the officials at IRCC. With this, we come to an end of this meeting, and the meeting is now adjourned.